Greek and Roman mythology share a great deal. So much so that the difference between the two seems to be only the names of the gods and goddesses themselves. Hermes, Hera and Hephaestus in the Greek pantheon become Mercury, Juno and Vulcan in the Roman world. One important god that undergoes a surprising metamorphosis is the Greek god of war, Aries, into the Roman god of war, Mars. This is The Gods Are Alive, gods of war, rage, and redemption. We start with Aries. Unlike most Olympians, Aries does not have a celebrated origin story. He is either the son of the king of the god Zeus and his consort Hera, the goddess of marriage, or, in later retellings of this story, Zeus is not involved and Hera conceives him with the help of a flower, blessed by the god Chloris. This, of course, incurs Zeus' wrath. The somewhat ambivalence the rest of the pantheon has for Aries is reflected in the way the Greeks themselves viewed Aries. Whenever he appears in stories, he is seen as barbarous, fickle and bloodthirsty, frequently facing humiliation and grief from the gods themselves. In the Greek world, temples to Aries were concentrated in small sects, for the Greeks revered Athena, the goddess of wisdom and military strategy. Athenian culture of Athens, also known as Hellenistic culture, dominates the understanding of what we consider to be Greek culture today. Athens even takes its name from its patron god, Athena. Athenian culture favored knowledge and free thought. It was the hotbed of new, exciting ideas in antiquity, being the birthing place of much of what we learn today in philosophy, logic, and ethics. To the Athenian mind, what Aries stood for was the antithesis to Athena, and hence much of their culture. While wartime aggression was seen as a necessary evil, what they revered more was military strategy. One Greek city that did ritually worship Aries was Sparta. The warlike Spartans often offered ritual animal sacrifice to Aries after noteworthy battles, but even here, Aries was never given as much importance as Athena, his close relative. It is worth knowing that Aries was afforded the honor of having his image stamped on Spartan coins. This cultural ambivalence the Greek world had for Aries may be astonishing to us, considering what Aries stood for, but it is not surprising. Aries was in many ways the personification of battle rage, of the untamed violence of war, the brutality and the bloodlust that possessed those on the battlefield. Even his very name meant bane, ruin and curse, etymologically, in the Greek ancient tongue. When you feel a red mist descend upon you, when you can feel nothing but blind fury, you are undoubtedly under the influence of Aries. It is at that moment when your world collapses to a singular point, when all logic and compassion leaves you, when all you see is the target of your wrath, that you are most attuned with your inner Aries. What makes this extreme avatar of anger so dangerous is that the target of your rage becomes a victim to the vindictive, absolute nature of the violence that it causes. Little good can come of such wrath, and perhaps this is why Aries was shunned so. Such dangerous aggression often has a deep layer of hurt underneath. Hurt and anger are intertwined, feeding upon each other in a forever compounding vicious cycle. Hurt, rejection, and isolation are recurring motifs in the stories of Aries' life. Even as a child, and then for the rest of his life, Aries is subjected to cruel rejection by Zeus. As a young child, he faces neglect. Homer narrates the story of how he is kidnapped by the Aloade giants Ephialtes and Otus, and held in a bronze cauldron, chained for an entire lunar year. Aries is rescued by the trickster god Hermes. Hermes only knows how to find Aries because giantess Erebea, because of her pity on the weakening child Aries. After hearing this story, it should be no surprise to know that Aries grows up to be vengeful and full of insatiable anger. It is impossible to talk about Greek antiquity without talking about the Trojan War. In Homer's Iliad, we see that the war between the Achaean and Trojan armies is not without divine intervention. True to his nature, Ares is fickle and changes his allegiance multiple times before ultimately being injured by Athena. He even directly disobeys the order of Zeus to the gods about staying away from the conflict, incurring his father's wrath. We see how deep the rift between them goes when Zeus says this to Ares as he returns from the battlefield, wounded. Then, looking at him darkly, Zeus, who gathers the clouds, spoke to him. "Do not sit beside me and whine, you double-faced liar. To me, you are the most hateful of all gods who hold Olympus. Forever quarreling is dear to your heart, wars and battles. And yet I will not long endure to see you in pain, since you are my child, and it was to me that your mother bore you. But were you born of some other god and proved so ruinous, long since would you have been dropped beneath the gods of the bright sky." Love and war are frequently paired, and a wounded Ares is cared for by goddess of love Aphrodite. From her kindness springs the beginning of a passionate love. The story of their love, however, is doomed from the start. Aphrodite was wedded to Hephaestus, the god of industry and artisans. Hephaestus is the other son of Zeus by Hera. He is deformed, disabled, disfigured. Like Ares, he is shunned by the Olympians, but whilst Ares grows to embody war and aggression, Hephaestus throws himself into work and becomes the personification of industry. Hephaestus, god of the forge, works ceaselessly in a workshop built inside a giant volcano. The Romans would call Hephaestus Vulcan, which is where we obtain the word volcano. Hephaestus is a master of his craft, constructing many marvels in his domain, from armor for the Olympians to automatons who could move at his bidding. Though he was a master of invention and had much to offer, his wife, Aphrodite, was frequently unfaithful to him. When the hard-working Hephaestus would leave their bed to go to work at his forge, Aphrodite would invite Ares into their marriage bed, where they would spend their hours making love. Aphrodite bore many children by Ares from their union: Harmonia, the goddess of harmony and concord; Phobos, the god of fear and panic; Deimos, the god of dread and terror. As fruitful as their union was, it was to end in misery. Aphrodite is more than love alone. She is the embodiment of desire, and as such has many admirers. Helios, god of the sun, is one such admirer. Each morning when Helios rides his sun chariot to raise the dawn, he takes the opportunity to gaze at the beautiful Aphrodite. After one of their nights together, Ares is late leaving Aphrodite and is seen by Helios, who in turn tells Hephaestus about the affair. Hephaestus, grief-stricken and enraged, decided not only to end their affair, but also to humiliate them. He crafts a beautiful golden net, strong enough to trap the divine lovers, and entraps them with it one day in their bed. To deepen their shame, he even invites all the gods from Olympus to see them caught in this net, uncovering their affair for all to see. Ares is disgraced, and their affair thus ends. Through all of these stories, we can see that Ares is more than a one-dimensional god of war. He is a scorned son, a warrior, a disgraced but passionate lover. It is somewhat saddening that within the Greek pantheon, he is continually reduced to the violence and untamed brutality of the battlefield. To the Romans, however, the god of war is much more than aggression alone. Where the Greeks viewed Ares with suspicion, the militaristic Romans fully embraced him as Mars. For the Romans, Mars was only second to Jupiter, king of the gods. Mars was more than just a god of war to the Romans. He was initially an agricultural deity who was later synthesized into the Mars we know today. Mars is the most important of the military gods of Rome. Where the Greeks saw Aries as a destabilizing, uncontrollable force that they felt was at odds with their culture, the Romans embraced Mars. Mars is military power and prowess. Mars is what is essential to securing peace, and it is Mars that aids their conquest for expansion. So great was Mars, he was considered the father of the Roman people. He was the mythic father of the founders of the city of Rome, Romulus and Remus. Most Roman depictions of Mars show him with a spear garlanded with laurel to symbolize peace won through military activity. According to Ovid, Juno bore Mars in Thrace, having conceived him alone with the help of the goddess Flora, who plucked a flower ritually with her thumb and touched Juno's belly, leaving her with child. Though this tale of conception was viewed unfavorably by the Greeks, this was not seen as such by the Romans. Juno conceived him alone in revenge, to get back at Jupiter for conceiving Minerva alone, hence taking away her role as a mother. Matronalia, the festival celebrated by married women in Rome in honor of Juno, the goddess of childbirth, is even marked on the first day of Mars month. Unlike Aries, Mars is said to have a wife, Nereo, who was the goddess of valor. She was his female counterpart, and stood for many of his virtues as abstractions, his vital force, majesty, and power. They were celebrated together in a festival by the Romans. When the Romans prayed to Mars, they invoked the name of this divine couple in supplication. And even though in Roman mythology, Venus, the Roman counterpart of Aphrodite, is still seen as a lover of Mars, their story is less tragic. Much art that depicts Venus and Mars together ignores the adulterous nature of their relationship. They are seen as a power couple whose affair was allegorically beautiful to the Roman mind. The union of love and war gave birth to Concordia, the Roman counterpart to Harmonia. Concordia was the goddess of agreement in society and marriage, and was revered for it. She had multiple temples devoted to her, as well as an imperial cult. Her image was even minted on coins. The Renaissance philosopher Marsilio Ficino noted that only Venus dominates Mars, and he never dominates her. The general populace highly romanticized their relationship, and even married couples often likened themselves to the divine lovers. Indeed, such was the reverence that though Venus was married to Vulcan at the Lectisternium, an essential public banquet to honor the gods and goddesses of the pantheon, Venus and Mars were still depicted together instead. And as Roman culture honored rituals, this was a mark of great respect and importance the Romans gave to Mars. Agriculture, war, and conquest are held in high regard by the Romans. Mars was seen as the patron deity and was closely involved and associated with all these elements, his very power holding sway both over life and death. His virility was called upon by farmers to aid in the growth of crops and to ward off disasters, just as he was called upon to protect soldiers' lives and grant them victory. Roman farmers prayed to Mars Pater, and Roman soldiers sacrificed to Mars Gravidus. With the socio-cultural impacts of these two gods being so different, is it even possible to consider Aries and Mars the same god? From the embittered, impassioned rage and violence of Aries, to the martial justice and virile power of Mars, the very lifeblood of the Roman Republic, how can we reconcile the two gods as avatars of the same ideal? It is the view of this channel that they are very much the same god. If Aries is the primal manifestation of rage, anger, hurt, and passion, then Mars is the fully realized and self-actualized manifestation of power and fury. Ironically enough, in Greek antiquity, there were temples that ritually shackled statues and icons of Aries to symbolize his ritual transformation into a peaceful deity. It is only in the Roman imagination that we see this raw, untamed energy channeled into a force that allows growth and encourages actual peace and prosperity. To put it simply, Aries can be understood as the voice of resentment, the boiling rage within, the kind of rage that can take over and leave utter destruction in its path. Mars is the path out of resentment, out of bitterness. Mars is anger channeled into vital energy, transmuted into action. Mars is disciplined. Mars is a protector and a father. If Aries is directionless violence born of pain and misery, then Mars is violence as the ultimate means to an end, as the path to peace. Anger is human. Anger is part of us, and like all emotions, it is not inherently a negative emotion. When anger turns to bitterness, into untamed aggression, just like the way the world and posterity see Aries, it can have very negative consequences. The answer to anger is not its absence. Anger is very much an essential life force, just like love and desire are. Without righteous anger, we may find ourselves unable to stand up for ourselves when we are wronged, and we may forever struggle, stuck in limbo. We may never gain the courage to determine the course of our lives, to change things for the better. Without anger, we may never be able to stand up against injustice, to fight for a better world. The answer to feeling rage is to harness it, to transmute it into something more than just anger. The answer is to tame the fire of anger with love, compassion, and mercy. Just like Venus in union with Mars begets Concordia, births the erotes and the fires of passion and desire. And just as we feel anger, we must also remember to feel our grief and hurt before the wound festers into something worse, something malignant. For what is grief, if not rage? To quote Anne Carson, "To feel anything deranges you." The slow wisdom of growth is to realize this and to continue anyway. To feel the hurt and anger and continue trying through the shame, the abandonment, and the rejection. It will be thankless work in the beginning, but one day you will stand in a field and watch it bloom. Watch it rich and lush with the fruits of your tending. Listen to your inner Aries and harness your inner Mars. May Mars Pater bless you and Mars Gravitas protect you. This is The Gods Are Alive, where we explore myths, stories of gods old and new, and what lessons they have to teach us. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss new videos. Thank you.